So what I've done now, since we've finished all of our stamping and everything across there and the 3Ding, I've stamped the image of this little verse and I've cut round it. I've left the long tab underneath, so again about 1.5 inches, and I've scored underneath the verse, rounded the corners, then I've come in 1/4 inch from each side and I've made a tab underneath as we did before. The score is there, which bends that. We pop that wherever we want it to stand up. I want mine to stand there. So I'll pop that on there and make a pencil mark each side of that corner, just in the corner there, like that. And then you can use those 2 marks to get your knife and cut between those 2 lines like we did on the other one. And then that will fit inside there. So it's exactly the same way as we did with the fairy, and that will stand up proud. Then the fairy, what I've done to that is I've stickled the wings and the hat, and I've glossy accented the actual fairy so it stands out a bit more. I've used some liquid pearls on the dots on the toadstool, and just before they were dried I sort of squished them to make the little marks. Put some stickles around the bottom, and now that's dry I'm going to glossy accent that as well. So that's that. I've made some mats to decorate this, and the direction of the stamping on these mats I will show you. I'll let me put the box up how it will be. So that will be something like this in a minute. That will be underneath, so you can stamp on that one whichever way you want to. This will sit on top, so this stamping needs to be towards you on this mat, and that one needs to be upside down because that's going to flip over on the back this way, and that's going to flip that way. So that needs to be, as you're looking at this and putting your mats on this way, that needs to be upside down, the stamping. So I've stamped the dandelion clock image on there. I've used the Memento, I think it's cocoa, isn't it, rich cocoa, and I've used the little plain leaves that come with the fairy holding the plain leaves, but as I say, I'll give you a list of all the stamps anyway. The mats you want are, I think I've buried them, the measurements somewhere. You want 2 mats of 2 3/4 by 1 1/4, and 1 2 3/4 by 2 3/4. If you use a sort of neutral paper that goes with your colours, is probably the best to do. I've inked around the edges with the Dusty Concord. I always want to call it Dusky Concord. It's Dusty Concord. Inked all the way around on those. I'm going to also ink the edges of the little verse with some of these colours that I did on the bottom before we put that on. Now we're going to decorate some of the back as well, but before we do that you also need to cut the edge off your tabs. They will be straight because we haven't cut anything off. You want to measure 3/4 inch at the side here and make a pencil mark, and then cut it down to that corner on each tab. You don't need to ink those edges of that because that's going to be stuck on the outside and you won't even see that, so that was fine. So we'll move on to the back from now. Actually, before we do that, our box tray will come up 1 inch. So what you need to do is on this side, each side, this side and that side, let's see if I'm right in camera, that side and that side, is measure 1 inch up, make a little pencil mark, and this one there. The top of this, which is going to come down here, is 1.5 inches. So if we measure 1.5 inches across the top and make a pencil mark, and the same on the other side, 1.5 inches and the pencil mark. There you are, you've got your 2 pencil marks either side and 1 down there. Now what you need to do is from each pencil mark we want to sort of cut it. You can cut it straight like this if you want to, straight across like that, or if you've got foliage and things cut you can fussy cut it and make it all wavy. Whichever you prefer, you can do whichever. I'm going to just cut it straight across at the moment because that's quicker for me. You have to do it the other way around. That's the way I'm going to do it, but you could, as I say, fussy cut it around your foliage, or just make a little pattern. As long as it stops on your pencil mark you can cut it wherever you want to. So it stops there and stops there, and you'll see why when we put it together. Let me rub my pencil marks out there. Look at those. So that's that side done. So let's turn it over. When we get to this side, this piece under here will be covered up, so we won't have to worry about that bottom piece at all. These are going this way, those are coming down over the top. So we will need to the next thing to do is stick the tabs down. So we're going to do that, put the glue with all of the decoration facing you, and then we're going to take that onto the side of that side. Whoop. And this one on the side of that side, and that's going to go up to the top and put it down on the desk, and then hold it on until it's dried off a bit. So you're going to have your box. This is all these marks are where I coloured it with the Pro markers, and that's the only thing about the Pro markers. You do have to watch if you're colouring anything that it's not coming through, which it does. So you're going to have to colour the back of it, or as we're going to matte it, it won't make any difference. So the bottom won't show, this piece at the bottom here won't show, so we don't have to do anything to that. So we need it to make mats for all the other pieces on here. We need to have 4 mats of 2 3/4 by 2 3/4. That will be those. And then we just need 2 3/4 by 1 mats for the top. The dandelion again on that one. I love this dandelion. I could stamp that all day, all over it, because I love it. So this is the first mat. This is a 2 3/4 by 2 3/4. I've done the 3D image on there of the dandelion clock. Did a normal stamped image at the front and the softer stamped image at the back, as I did on the one of the previous videos for this. So that's that. My own script, if it's got any pattern or script, needs to be this way up, obviously. Then these 2 panels I'm going to decorate. I'm going to use the fairy dust. I'm going to put fairy on one side and dust on the other. I seem to have somehow lost one of my mats. I'm going to have to, there you are, I told you earlier I was losing things. So I'm going to put the dust on one, so let me just stamp that up. And then I'm going to put fairy on the other one. And just ink up the fairy on this one. And stamp that one on there. For the other one. And then I'm going to ink the edges of that. 3/4 by 2 3/4 squares on there, whichever one you want to do. And we can stamp another image on there. This is how I store my Lavina stamps. I get some blank CD cases or DVD cases from Tesco's. I think they were about £3.50 for about 10, and I just put them in there. Then I put a little sticky label on the side, and I put them in a drawer upwards, and I can find all my different manufactured stamps. I've got some stored like this and others stored in different ways, but these I find are good to store like that. Not when you knock the top off it, but any other time. Them on the outside when I'm using them. I've got a project going, I just stick them over there and pop them on the outside so they're easy to use, and I'll pull that off when I need the stamp. And then they don't dry out, because you know these rubber stamps, if you leave them off the block or off whatever you're storing them on, they go dry and then you can't make them stick. You have to wet them. So when I take the one I've just been using off, once I've cleaned it, I just put it on the outside for then until I can put them all away properly. It saves me having to put it all back in the case until I've finished. Do that one with the memento again. When you finish stamping that mat, pop it on the back, and then we're going to go on to our side. Get one of your two mats that's left over, the 2 3/4 by 2 3/4, place it on the side, making an even gap round those 3 sides, and then just make a pencil mark, making a gap that's the same size as the other sides, and make your pencil mark. Then you can cut that down. If you find a knife, do that. That will give you your sides. You can stamp some foliage on there, so do the other side the same. Stamp whatever foliage or fairy you want on that side, and then we can mat those up. So I finished stamping the dandelion seed head on that one, and I've stuck both of them on the sides there. And then we can put in our 3D fairy and the message. That's the message, so if we just feed that in the slit at the bottom, and the fairy just through there, out the back, and then we can glue that down, like you can see there. Glue that and stick that there. And then glue the back of the tab on the message and glue that down. If it does happen to come past the edges, just clip it off with the scissors. Like that. And then they should stand up proud there inside the box. So it's a little 3D scene. So just to reinforce the fairy and to make it stand up a little bit, you can make an acetate post. This is about 2 3/4 inches long, and I've scored it at both ends at 1/4 inch, and I'm going to bend it one way and the end the other way on the other one, so that it makes like a Z shape. And then I'm going to attach it to the fairy at the back with a glue dot. So let's find the glue dots. I'll put that on there, and then pop that on the back of your fairy. As you can see, the back of the fairy I've just coloured with pro markers, and I'm going to just pop that in there. And then the other one, because that's gone that way, this one sticks up this way, then that will go onto the surface. So another glue dot, and just pop it on the surface up there. that will make it stand up. I can also do one for that. I keep my packaging. This is one of some pro markers. So if I keep the packaging, then I can use it for silly little things like this. I'll just cut it up because it's quite thick, this. I just want a small one this time. Just score it, again about a 1/4 of an inch on each end. Just enough to be able to bend it over, and again we'll do the Z fold. So one way, one the other. Same thing. Glue dot on the back. Stick it on the back of your post. Another glue dot on the other end, and then that can go down on the surface just to hold that up. There you go, and then it won't flop at all, and you can hardly see it. What I was going to do then is, I've got some reindeer moss which I used on the fairy house that I made, so I'm going to pop a bit of that down on the floor of mine and glue it in,